All right, so the music's done. That storm knocked out the internet, apparently. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's get this all finished up. So we talked about margin of error. We talked about the presidential election. I want you to watch. Don't watch any of the presidential election. Voting for either of them is not a good situation. Sad in a country with all of our people. Those are the best candidates that we can roll out there. But what I want you to see is just how they have that margin of error on there, so you guys can understand what it is that I'm talking about in a real life example. Okay, so what can go wrong with samples? Well, random sampling eliminates bias, but even a large random sample will give results that aren't always reflective of the truth. Sampling in the real world is always complex. Okay, sampling variability is described by the margin of error. There goes power. Oh, it's back. Okay, so two main sources of error in sample surveys: sampling errors and non-sampling errors. And we're going to talk about those for a little bit. Okay, so a sampling error is a mistake made in the process of taking a sample that could lead to inaccurate info. One is bad sampling, like voluntary response. Those are things that we can avoid. Now, sometimes things are not easy to avoid. Sampling begins with a list of individuals from which we draw our sample, our sampling frame. Ideally, the sampling frame lists every individual in the population. Because it's rarely available, most samples suffer from undercoverage. Undercoverage comes when some groups are left out of the process. So if you're talking about surveying households, well, you get people that are homeless are underrepresented. Okay, people in prisons or in dorms, they're also not represented in that. Another example of undercoverage: calling landlines. Now, this is probably an example that's becoming obsolete because so few people have landlines now. People just communicate on their cell phones. Okay, but if you just talk to people with landlines, then you're forgetting all those people with cell phones. If you're dealing with people that just have cell phones, you might be leaving out a population of, say, the elderly, that the elderly population, maybe some of them don't have cell phones. Okay, so that's an example of undercoverage, when you can't get to a group of people. The results of national sample surveys have some bias due to undercoverage if the people not covered differ from the rest of the population. Now, these sampling errors are usually small. Okay, they're usually smaller of the types of errors. Then we have what are called non-sampling errors. Most serious form of bias is non-response, when a person can't be reached or refuses to participate. How many of you guys hear that, pick up a phone, and there's a survey on the other end of the line, and you just hang up and you don't give them your opinion? Okay, that is an example of a non-sampling error. Okay, that's an example of non-response. Okay, because the person's just not going to respond. Or you get an email and the person just goes click, okay, and they don't respond. Okay, that's a non-sampling error. Non-response to surveys often exceeds 50%. Half of the people won't even bother to take it. So it's so hard for companies to get opinions because so few people are willing to go through the process to take it. Non-response is higher in urban areas, and retired people can be easier to reach, which makes them overrepresented. If you were to call someone during the middle of the day, and if you called someone at home and they answer, like right now, it's probably not a good example because of COVID, but if you get them during the day, older people are easy to reach. They're always home. They don't leave the house as much as younger people. So sometimes they're a little bit overrepresented. Non-response is non-sampling because it occurs after the sample has been chosen. Okay? So when discussing bias, speculate on the direction of the bias. This is important. I've got stars on it, so you know it's going to be a quiz or a test question. A survey about unemployment over the phone, non-response, will likely cause the estimated proportion of unemployment to be too high, since they are more likely to be at home and reply to a survey. Okay, so if I'm calling about, something about unemployment, a survey about unemployment, and I call during the daytime and I actually reach somebody, well, the chance that they're unemployed is probably high, so they're going to be overrepresented in this sample. Another non-sampling error is when someone gives an incorrect response. Okay, this is called response bias. Someone will go up to, hey, did you vote? Or did you vote? And people feel like they should vote. So they answer, yeah, oh yeah, I voted. And they're lying. Okay, so that's an example of response bias. Or someone says, hey, did you brush your teeth today? Nobody wants to come out and say, hey, yeah, guess what? I was in a hurry. I didn't brush my teeth. Oh, yeah, of course I brushed my teeth. Okay, so you don't know if they're telling the truth or not. Answers to questions about past events can be accurate because if someone has a faulty memory. Okay, have you visited a dentist in the last 6 months and someone's like, oh boy, yeah, well, I want to say yes because otherwise people will think I'm gross. So yeah, oh yeah, I've been at a dentist in the last 6 months. And whether or not they have, you don't know. Okay, so it talks here, you guys can read this is kind of self-explanatory, but the wording of questions is also an important influence on answers given to a survey. Confusing or leading questions can lead to strong bias. Even the order of questions matter. Okay, so here's an example of the order. How happy are you with your life in general? Someone's like, yeah, I'm kind of happy. And then the next question is, how many dates have you been on in the last month? And the person's like, oh, no, not that many. Now, if I ask this question first and I said, hey, how many dates have you been in the last month? And the person's like, oh, geez, yeah, I really haven't been doing any of that stuff. And then it says, how happy are you in your life in general? And the guy's like, yeah, my life sucks, man. You know, like sometimes the order of questions can help that. You know, like you say, you know, don't you think that everybody should, you know, they can influence your answer based on the questions that they ask you. All right, we're wrapping it up. Here we go. During the middle of the drive to pass healthcare reform legislation, several different polling organizations attempted to measure the sentiments of Americans. A New York Times CBS poll found that 66% surveyed supported a government-administered health insurance plan, something like Medicare coverage. However, a Fox News poll found only 44% supported a government-run health insurance plan. Okay, and so they look at the difference there, and it's the wording of things. Okay, here, a government-administered. That doesn't sound as much. Government's running it. Oh, government's running it. I'm not going to support that. That's why maybe that percentage is lower. Okay, 4-1. It was grueling. It was a long section. Hoping it made sense. And if it didn't, please, when you come to class, ask me questions. I will be happy to answer them. All right? All right.